Hey everyone, and welcome to Chef AJ Live. I'm your host, Chef AJ, and this is where I introduce you to amazing people like you who are doing great things in the world that I think you should know about. My guest today is Dr. John Tanner. He's been on the show before telling his remarkable story of coming back from the dead. He actually had a cardiac arrest, and he's here to tell about it. But because of that, he actually went on a plant-exclusive, oil-free, vegan, whole food diet, kind of a la Dr. Esselstyn. And because of that, he actually founded a food company in Southern California called Little Green Forks. And it's a fabulous company. I'd order food from them anytime I would go out of town, because even though I batch cook, Charles can't fend for himself. It was so much easier. And we have so many friends still living in LA, like Dr. Daryl Woodruff, who's a regular viewer of the show, that orders from them regularly just because their food is really good. So why am I telling you this? Well, now it's nationwide. So if you live anywhere, I believe it's the continental United States, we'll get into the geography of the delivery as soon as I introduce Dr. Tanner, you can order it. So I'm not in Southern California anymore. And it just so happens I'm leaving on Saturday for an 8-day trip to Tecate, Mexico, where I have the privilege of teaching hands-on cooking at Rancho La Puerta. If you want to get in on it, let me know. We can get a group together next year, maybe for my birthday. So I ordered Little Green Forks before I went. And I'll just show you what my order is so that I can put it in the refrigerator and then introduce Dr. Tanner, and he'll tell you all about it, how it's made and the delivery and all that stuff. We'll get to that. But let me just show you what I picked. And it looks delicious. So I picked this, and the menu changes all the time, but hearty broccoli and sweet potato. I mean, I would call this a bowl. And this looks yummy. This is exactly how I would eat if I was home to prepare it, but I won't be. And, teriyaki jackfruit. This looks really yummy. And large udon noodle. So I would guess for Charles, for me, this would be one serving, but for Charles, I think he's going to get 2 servings out of each of them because he doesn't eat as much as I do. And we got a soup here. And again, everything is vegan, whole food, plant-based, oil-free. And we'll talk about if there's sugar or salt in things and how much. This is vegetable corn chowder. But I told Dr. Tanner I was going to try the food on the air, but the problem was it came yesterday and it was cookies. And these are so good. He should sell these. And I know he does sell these, but I mean, he should sell these because these are as good as anything I bake. These are called cinnamon oatmeal bites. And if you want me to eat one on the air, I will, but I'll eat it towards the end of the show. These are really delicious. So without further ado, please welcome Dr. John Tanner.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be on with you again. I've known you for so long and learned so much from you, and it's just a pleasure.
Well, listen, I gotta say, you've done good. You have, the tagline of my show is people are doing great things in the world that I think they should know about. And I think people should know about this because it's a niche that needs to be filled, and it's now starting to be filled. There's a few other companies that do it too, but the more the merrier, because even, people don't necessarily want to order the same thing from the same company. So I think it's good that there's more companies doing this.
Well, you showed some food that you're going to eat, and let me show you food that I'm going to eat. This is pumpkin spice pudding, or it really has no pumpkin in it, so it's sweet potato and in quotes pumpkin spice pudding. As you know, recipes are for desserts are difficult in this. No sugar, no oil. How are you going to make a dessert taste good? But a number of years ago, I was at a conference, and you were doing a cooking demo, and you handed out small samples of this pumpkin spice pudding to everybody in the audience, and I just fell in love.
It's so good. You should have called it Chef AJ's pumpkin spice.
I should have.
There's no reason you can't rebrand it right now. But
right.
You're right. And what the truth is, the only reason I'm saying that is I'm just funning you, because it really wasn't my recipe. It was developed by a lady named Mairead Reddy at a potluck I attended in Cleveland. And I don't think I changed it at all. No, I didn't. And so if anything, we have to name it after her. But I was just teasing, John. But it's delicious, and it tastes as good as pumpkin pie without the pumpkin.
So I want to talk about Little Green Forks to start. There's the website. I hope we can add this to the show notes or somehow so afterwards.
Yes, we did, as well as we're going to get a discount code for everybody for their first order. And I'm going to get all that in there while you're talking.
Excellent, excellent. So here are some of the foods that I love. And I eat little green forks for almost all of my meals every day. So there's a burger with fries, of course, no oil, sweet potato bowl, which is delicious, Southwest salad, broccoli soup. We have a few ethnic dishes, including pad thai, which is one of my favorites. And of course, the Chef AJ pumpkin pudding. Oh, I just love it so much. So, the food stuff is fun. But I wanted to talk about this oil-free plant-based food delivered nationwide and why that is. And some of that is about things that aren't so fun. And the why is, why did we start this company and why might your listeners be interested in this food? So if I can jump off and talk about some of those things, it starts for me with heart disease, and there are other diseases as well that nutrition is important for. I want to just touch on some strategies for success. We'll show some pictures of our kitchen near the end. And I have kind of a surprise. We've got a special program for newbies. Now, I know lots of the folks who are listening to this have been following you for a long time, and they've been eating this healthy way, and they're totally healthy without disease. But if there's a few people that are listening that have heart disease, have diabetes, have intestinal problems, have arthritis, want to get rid of these things, they want to lose a bunch of weight. We've got a special program for them that I'll talk about at the end. But I want to start with this, my story. It started maybe 17 years ago when my wife turns to me and says, "John, do you know that you have the body of a god?" And we'd been married for 20 years and she'd never said anything remotely like that. So I said, "Really? I have the body of a god?" She said, "Yes, unfortunately, the god is Buddha." So
yeah, you guys, I could see a little similarity there.
Yeah. Not a similarity that I would have wanted. So I felt that I needed to do something about this, and I started exercising, and I started running a mile every day, and I thought I was completely healthy on this day. But as I went my usual route here near my home in Pasadena, I got partway through, staggered a couple of steps, and hit the ground unconscious with my heart stopped. This is how much warning you have of heart disease. It's a problem with the insides of your arteries, so you can't see it from the outside. There's no nerve endings in there, so you don't feel it. You can think that you're fine, and the next moment dead on the street. Now, fortunately, somebody saw me go down and ran over and gave chest compressions, and the firemen were there, and the ambulance came and got me to the hospital. And I did survive, yay, obviously. But I started learning some things about heart disease. Many of you may know that it's the leading killer of men and women in this country. It's sometimes thought of as more of a man's disease, and at the younger ages, more men die of heart disease than women do, but at the older ages, more women die of heart disease than men do. So in this country, it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, this is the disease that's more likely to kill you than any other. And sudden cardiac arrest without warning is the most common form of heart disease. You can also have a heart attack where the heart doesn't stop completely, or you can have angina, which is severe chest pain. But most common thing is suddenly your heart stops. And if that happens to you outside of the hospital, your chances of surviving are about 3%. So taking all these things together, the leading killer, the most common form of it, and a really low survival rate, it means people are dropping dead all over the place. And we hear about it in the news of famous people. It wasn't too long ago, the mayor of San Francisco was okay one day and the next day he's dead of heart disease. But it's not just famous people. Unfortunately, it's our friends, our family members. Probably everyone listening here knows at least one person, maybe several, who have seemed okay one day and the next day they're dead due to heart disease. So in that context, me having sudden cardiac arrest is not unusual at all. Surviving it is a little bit unusual. I fell into the 3% category, and I'm really lucky about that. But this, let me show you though what happened when they got me to the hospital that day. They inserted a catheter from an incision in my leg, the femoral artery. And they fed this small plastic tube up and around the aorta. And you can see this plastic tube ending right here, where I made a bend into my coronary artery. So the blood vessels that feed the muscle of the heart are on the outside of the heart. And the heart doesn't actually get nutrition and oxygen from the blood that's pumping down the middle of it. It's fed by these small coronary arteries. My heart is in this region right here. You can't see it real well because the x-rays go right through muscle tissue, but you can see one of my ribs here, another rib here, spinal column over here, and you can see this catheter. And just before this video starts, the doctor pushes a foot pedal, which squirts radio opaque dye through the catheter coming out of my leg, and it squirts out here where the doctor can see what the blood flow is. This radio opaque dye just means it shows up dark in an x-ray. So this is what the doctor saw that day. And I want you all to see if you can tell where the problem was that day. Does anybody see where they think the problem might be? Are you looking perhaps? Well, let's see the video one more time. Did you find it? One more time. Right there. Now, it looks like from this frame of the video that there's no blood getting through this clog right here, but we know there's a little bit getting through or else we wouldn't see the dye down here. And also if there wasn't any getting through, I would have been dead. So there's a little getting through there, but not much. And that was my problem that day. And I really, really wanted to understand why this happened to me. And my cardiologist was not terribly helpful, but I kept asking. And eventually I found my way through to a doctor by the name of Caldwell Esselstyn, who wrote a book, Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease. Well, okay, that's the topic I'm really interested in. And in this book, he says some really interesting things. He says nearly half the people in the US will suffer heart disease. That's a lot. Not all of them will die of it, but nearly half the people will suffer from it. This doctor says you should know your cholesterol levels, both your total and LDL. Those are the most important numbers. And in addition to knowing what your numbers are, you really need to know what the healthy numbers are. Your total cholesterol should be below 150 milligrams per deciliter, and your LDL should be below 80. And if that's the case, you're safe. Sadly, the vast majority of Americans are not safe. And if that's you, if you're in that category of not safe, this doctor says, fix the problem yourself. Doctors cannot fix this problem. Wow. This is a doctor saying that doctors cannot fix the leading killer in this country. This was very surprising to me. But, and this is either bad news or good news. The bad news is if you want to live your life however you see fit, and if you get sick as a result of that, you'll go to the doctor and they'll fix it. This is a problem because the doctors cannot fix it. But if you're the kind of person who wants to decide for yourself whether you're going to be healthy or sick, you want to decide for yourself through your own actions whether you're going to live a long time or cut your life short unnecessarily, this is great news because you can fix the problem yourself. There are some treatments, though, that the medical establishment would do to you or have you do to yourself that if you don't fix the problem yourself. They prescribe medications, a group of drugs called statins that they go by the trade names Lipitor, Zocor, Crestor. There's also generic names, Simvastatin, atorvastatin. Turns out these medications don't work very well and they have harmful side effects. I'm going to talk about both those more in a little bit. Doctors are happy to put stents inside you. These are small metal mesh tubes that they slide in through the catheter and then expand in place, pushing the clog out of the way. I got one of those the day of my cardiac arrest. It failed. They put 3 more in. One of those failed. They put 3 more in. So I now have 7 stents in my body. Not only do they not cure the root cause, they cause special problems of their own. So in this country, though, we do 800,000 of those a year, and they don't cure the disease. We do coronary artery bypass graft, CABG. You may remember former President Clinton had bypass surgery, and then later he had more heart problems because guess what? Bypass surgery doesn't cure the disease. We spend $10 billion a year on the drugs, and by the time we add the surgeries, it's in the $50 billion range. If you also take into account lost work due to this sickness and so on, it's in the hundreds of billions of dollars that are lost on heart disease. But diet can prevent and reverse heart disease. Really? That's interesting. Now, but since it's the leading killer, why is that? I believe that it's because we don't have an idea in our minds the relationship between what we choose to eat and what happens inside. And these videos from Dr. Michael Clapper, I think, really help us understand that.
Now, normally, this liquid layer floating on top of the blood clot is quite transparent. It's yellow, but quite clear. You can see right through it. The blood in this patient's tube, however, was anything but clear. The serum floating on his clot was thick and greasy white. It looked like glue. In fact, it stuck to the sides of the blood tube when I shook the tube. I went back to the patient. I said, "Mr. Phillips, did you eat before you came to the hospital tonight?" He said, "Yes." I said, "What did you have?" He said, "I had a cheeseburger and a milkshake." And when he said that, I realized that what I was looking at in his tube was all the fat in the beef burger, all the butter fat in the cheese, and the butter fat in the ice cream and in the milkshake.
Now, if at some point in your life you've had a milkshake or a cheeseburger, don't worry too much about that because your body can clear it away. It takes hours, maybe 10 or 12 hours to clear that gunky stuff out. But what do most Americans do before that 10 or 12 hours has passed? They eat some more of the same stuff. So most of us in this country are bathing the insides of their arteries 24 hours a day, 365 days a year with this gluey stuff. And I did that for 52 years before it caught up to me. Your body can clear it out for a long time, but not forever. And let's take a look at this patient's arteries to see what this diet has done to him.
Now, the next morning, we took Mr. Phillips to the operating room, and I put him to sleep, and the surgeon opened up his chest. And from these arteries, he began pulling out yellow, greasy deposits of fatty material called atherosclerosis.
So think about this picture the next time you are tempted to reach for a cheeseburger or a milkshake. This is the stuff you're building up inside of you. And oh, by the way, this yellow greasy deposits, this cholesterol, they don't form on the inside walls of the arteries. They form just behind the lining of the arteries. And so to pull this stuff out, they're also pulling out the linings of this guy's arteries, which make him less healthy. So they don't actually do this surgery anymore, but I thought the video was quite instructive so that we can keep in our minds what is happening inside our arteries when we eat the cheeseburgers and the milkshakes. Let's talk for a moment about cholesterol blood tests. Cholesterol is a natural substance in our body, and it's not the absolute level of it that causes death. It's not that you have a surge of it one day and, and like a poison, it's too high and it kills you. It's the long-term exposure of elevated cholesterol that does the damage. But it is an indicator of the likelihood of death, and it's a pretty good indicator. The Framingham Heart Study established the correlation of this high cholesterol in the blood with heart attacks and death. And so under some conditions, this marker is an effective diagnostic tool. There's one big exception we'll talk about shortly, but for the most part, if you get this test, it can tell you whether you're pretty healthy or better go to the ER right away or somewhere in between. The American Heart Association gives a guideline for this number of total cholesterol of 200. I found out about this because my medical provider is Kaiser Permanente, a health maintenance organization in California, and I think other states as well. And when you get your blood test back from Kaiser, it says, okay, here's your number, and here's the standard number that you can compare yours to. And the standard they give is 200. And I asked them, where did you get that number? Because that's not healthy. And they said, well, we get it from American Heart Association. So I contacted the American Heart Association and said, where does this number come from? They said, well, it's about the average of all Americans. This is an average among a group of people whose leading cause of death is heart disease. You don't want to be average. You want to be healthy. And 200 is not that. So don't believe that 200 is okay. The Framingham Heart Study found that a third of the people with heart disease had cholesterol between 150 and 200. So you'd certainly rather be below 200 than above 200. You'd rather be in the 1/3 category than the 2/3. But don't believe that just because you're under 200, you're okay. In fact, my last blood test before my cardiac arrest was at 188. So if somebody thought that 200 was okay, I would beg to differ with that. Another interesting thing I ran across, in June 2010, a study came out that shows that statin drugs, Lipitor, Zocor, Crestor, they break the correlation between the blood test measurement and your chances of death. What does that mean, break the correlation? It means the cholesterol blood tests go down when you take these medications, but you still die nearly as often. Really? Let me draw an analogy. If you're driving your car along and you see the red check engine light come on, you know that the red light itself isn't the problem. It's an indicator that there's a problem somewhere deep inside your engine, but you know to not ignore that. So you take it to the mechanic, and the next day your car comes back and the check engine light is off, and you think, oh, good, the mechanic fixed the problem. But then if you happen to look behind the dashboard and you located the wires going to the red light, and they look like this, you might conclude that in fact the mechanic didn't fix the problem. He just disabled the indicator. And you would be pretty ticked because you knew you'd still have the problem, even though it was no longer saying that you had the problem. So don't let the statin drugs fool you, even if you take them and your cholesterol level goes down. Don't let them make you believe that you're safe. Now, what do these drugs actually do? They inhibit the liver's natural production of cholesterol. The liver's supposed to produce a little bit in the right quantities, the right kinds of cholesterol. And this drug that they've convinced you to take counters that. Let me be a little more blunt. This is a liver poison. This is a liver toxin that you're being induced by the medical profession to take to mess up the liver's natural production of cholesterol. It doesn't do anything about the cholesterol that got into your body from the animal products you ate. So maybe it's not a surprise that it's really not very effective in reducing death. And it has these side effects, including, guess what, liver damage, muscle soreness, and brain problems that look a lot like Alzheimer's. So a lot of people, especially elderly people that are taking statin drugs in high quantities for a long period of time, and people think they have Alzheimer's, but they're finding in some cases they take them off the statin drugs and they get better, which Alzheimer's never gets better. So there's a lot of unfortunate loss of memory, loss of cognition, concentration problems that are being caused by these statin drugs. As I read medical journals and went to conferences, talked to experts, I found some individual studies that I thought were just fascinating in their results. And after a while, I realized I could sort of put all of these 5 studies on one graph, because each of the studies has a control group that isn't treated and a treatment group, and they compare those two. And so if I just line up all the untreated groups, I can compare these 5 different treatments for heart disease. The first one of these comes from Duke University, where for years, they had patients coming into their medical center as candidates for stents, sort of like the way I was a candidate for stents. In their case, though, in the study, they chose half of them to get the stent and half of them didn't get the stent. And they tracked both groups for a long period of time afterwards. And eventually they had enough data to publish the death rate per patient for the group that didn't get stents. And I've scaled that to 100%. And I've applied the same visual scaling to the number for the deaths of the people who got the stents. And if the stent was a highly effective treatment, you would expect this death rate to be much lower than not getting the treatment. And there it is. 97% of the people that would die without a stent still die. It's almost negligible benefit. Thank you very much. And oh, by the way, there's new problems that these stents create, as I've experienced myself. The next study comes from looking at blood test measurements for cholesterol for a group of patients who were treated with statin drugs and a control group that didn't get the statin drugs. And so after a period of time, they measured their blood tests, and the cholesterol levels for the group that didn't get the treatment, I scaled that to 100%. The blood test measurements for the group that did get the statin drugs, here it is, 85% down. Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, statin drugs work. They work to lower the blood test measurement. But do we care about the blood test measurement? We only care about it if it's an indicator of our likelihood of death. Well, let's, instead of looking at the indicator, let's look at the death rate itself. So here comes the data from this June 2010 study that I mentioned before, where they had something like 65,000 patients, half of them all with heart disease, all with high cholesterol. Half of them got statin drugs and half of them didn't. And again, now we're back to looking at death rates. So the death rate per patient for the group that did not get the statin drugs, I scaled to 100%. The death rate for the group that got the statin drugs, here it is, 91%. 91% of the people that would die without statin drugs still die. Now, I can't say that there's no benefit, although the author of the study said exactly that. He said within the error bounds of the study, we cannot conclude any benefit from statin drugs. But I would say mathematically, the most likely is that it reduces the death rate by about 9%. But that's a far cry from what the indicator is telling us. So the difference between these two bars, this is what the blood test is telling you, making you think you're safe. And here's where you really are. Very different. And what really annoys me about this is that doctors present this as though it is the solution. And they don't tell you about the statistics are really quite poor. And so you might not be so inclined to look elsewhere for other solutions. Well, let's look at a couple of them. The next study comes from the UK. It's called the EPIC study. And they asked people what they ate. And they eat there, much like we do here, a lot of meat and dairy and so on. But like here, there's a small percentage of them that just don't eat meat. A vegetarian might still eat animal products, including dairy and eggs, but some people just choose to not eat meat. So they ask people year after year, what do you eat? And they track them in terms of their disease and death. And they finally published the death rates I picked out of their study, the death rate due to heart disease for the people who eat normally, like we do here in this country and they do there. And that death rate I scaled to 100%. And then I also took the death rate due to heart disease for the people who just cut meat out of their diet and are vegetarian, and I plotted it here. Well, there's still a lot of red there, still a lot of people dying of heart disease that are vegetarian. But if you look not at the height of the red bars, but you compared the white space above, you could say that this treatment, just cutting meat out of your diet, is 3 times more effective than taking statin drugs. Wow. If the medical establishment had a drug that was 3 times better than statins, they would make billions of dollars. But they don't have such a drug, doesn't exist. So that what the doctor should say is, we can give you this drug, it doesn't work very well and has terrible side effects, or you can just cut meat out of your diet and you have 3 times more reduction in death rate. And some doctors are saying that more and more each year, but maybe not your doctor. He may not be aware of this. But there's one more study I need to tell you about. And this is comes from Caldwell Esselstyn. He had a preliminary study in his book. I mentioned the book earlier, and I found that study to be fascinating. I think you might too. But he was criticized because there was only 18 patients in the study, and he was suggesting that was what happened to those 18 patients was representative of a larger population. And so he went back with some other researchers and did another study that happened after the book was published, and the study results were published in a research journal. They for this study, they met with 200 patients that were all high risk for heart disease, and they took each one individually, and Dr. Esselstyn said, I really want you to eat this ideal diet, and I'll say what that is in a moment. But he said to each patient, I think this will make a big difference in your heart disease. And as he described the diet, 90% of the patients said, yep, doc, I'm in. I'm really going to do this. The other 10% said, no, the foods that you're telling me I can't eat anymore, or it's not worth it to me, and I'm just going to continue to eat the way I was. And the doctor said, okay, but please stay in the study so we can track you. So over the many years of this study, they tracked 2 groups: the group that didn't change their dietary pattern at all, and the groups that did. And in this study, they looked at not just death due to heart disease, but 4 other cardiac events, including heart attack that didn't result in death, angina, stent emplacement, and bypass surgery. So they published the tally of these 5 types of cardiac events total per patient for the group that didn't change their diet, and I scaled that to be 100%. And I applied the same visual scaling to the cardiac event rate for the group that switched to this ideal diet. Before I show you the height of this red bar, though, I want each of you to think, how low does this red bar need to go before it's important to you? I think you'll all agree it needs to go below the vegetarian bar. If it turns out it's up here somewhere, well, we just won't do that. We'll do the vegetarian thing. So it needs to go lower than that, but how low before it's important to you? Do you have sort of a feeling for that? Ready to see the red bar? Here it is, 1%. 99%, virtually all of the leading killer in this country just goes away if you eat the right things and avoid eating the wrong things. What are the consequences of this conclusion? What this says is, if you eat properly, you don't have heart disease. The logical converse of that is, if you have heart disease, you're not eating properly. What this means is that clog that you saw in my heart earlier, that was my fault. I did that to myself. And I'm sad to say the vast majority of Americans are in the process of doing that to themselves. But you don't have to. Here's a picture from Esselstyn's book of a patient who had a problem in his coronary artery. This is the same coronary artery that got me, the distal left anterior descending coronary artery, sometimes called the widowmaker, because it often is the one that clogs. This guy had not just one clogged point, but a whole raggedy region there, and they couldn't stent him. He didn't have any other choice but to go down the hall to this other doctor and hear about this ideal diet thing. But he adopted that diet, and a couple of years later, they had a chance to look at his heart artery again. Normally, you wouldn't do this if somebody's healthy, but this guy was a doctor himself. And look at this, same artery, 2.5 years later, it healed itself. Your body has an amazing ability to heal itself if you just quit abusing it 3 times a day with the food that you're eating. So what is the diet? Well, let's start out with the things that are killing us. Red meat, you probably knew that. It's been in the news for decades about how harmful that is. But what you might not be aware of is that pork, chicken, and fish are just as bad. Fish has a special problem we won't have time to get into today. It has to do with toxins. What many of the experts think are even worse than meats are dairy products. Milk, butter, ice cream, cheese. One of the experts calls cheese the most damaging substance on the planet. Other problem areas are eggs. Why do these things cause problems? Because animal protein is inflammatory, not good for us. And you inflame the insides of the arteries. And then the other component of these animal products is cholesterol. And then the cholesterol gets through the damaged artery walls and causes problems in behind. So the animal protein is bad, the animal fat is bad for us. The two together are the perfect storm to just ravage us top to bottom. Other problem foods include processed foods. I threw a donut up there just as a placeholder, but there's a whole set of things that have lots of sugars, lots of oils, not so good. And this next one is a surprise to many people about how bad vegetable oil is for us. Certain groups, including Chef AJ and others, are constantly saying no oil, no oil. But for many people, the first time they encounter that, it's kind of a surprise. Really? Oil is bad? Yes. And I can talk about the studies that show that if you want. But then some people say, well, okay, oil's in my stir-fried vegetables. I just don't do that. So I'm not getting that many oils. You would be surprised how many products have oils. Of course, all the chips, a lot of the salad dressings, fake butters, and even products that you think are healthy, like granola bars. You look at the ingredients list and oil is in there, and it really dominates the calorie count. So I'm not saying you should never eat any of these things. This is a free country. You can eat what you want, but I'm saying that the science is really, really clear. If you eat these things on a regular basis, the most likely scenario for you is heart disease and you in the casket before your time. Your call. Or you could instead eat these healthy things, colorful vegetables of all kinds, heavy emphasis on leafy greens, fruits in moderation. Beans are awesome. Whole grains, including corn, oatmeal, brown rice. White rice is okay, brown is better. Whole wheat, not that processed white fluffy stuff. Potatoes are awesome nutritionally. The problem with potatoes is the company they keep. You take a healthy potato and you fry it in oil, you've just made it unhealthy. You take a healthy baked potato and you slather it with butter or sour cream or cheese, you've just made it unhealthy. Another super healthy food is sweet potatoes. There are some societies on our planet that eat nothing but sweet potatoes. They have no colon cancer, no heart disease. I'm not saying you should eat only these things, but I'm saying if you should choose to eat only these things, the science is really, really clear. What happens to you? You live maybe 14 to 20 more years, depending on what study you look at. Maybe enough not only to see your kids grow up, but your grandkids. That would be awesome. And the closest you come in your old age to the graveyard is when you go running through. Now, what might be more important to you than these extra years is the quality of those years. In this country, I believe the average number of years of disability before death is around 9. So you can have 9 years that are really poor quality of life. But with this diet, many of those diseases just don't happen. So you can have 9 really great, functional, quality, energetic years, followed by 14 to 20 more healthy, energetic years, or you can have 9 years that really suck and then die based on your food choice. I'll hope you'll choose to be healthy and live a long time. The experts call this a low-fat, whole plant diet. You may hear the word vegan, which means no animal products, but there are plenty of vegan foods that aren't so healthy. So to really get healthy foods, you want a low-fat, whole plant diet. That includes vegetables, fruits, whole grains, and legumes. No meat or fish, no eggs or dairy products. This is just telling you in words what you saw in pictures in the previous slide. No oils, including olive oil. No processed foods. and the low fat comes in here. You really want less than 10% of your calories from fat. One of the experts suggests that 7% is about the right number. Well, how are you going to achieve that? Are you going to count your calories all day long to see where you're at? Well, that would be tough. So the easier thing is just to remove the foods that are problematic. Well, the meat or fish, eggs and dairy and oils are the main source of a lot of fat in the standard American diet. So getting rid of those goes a long ways. But there's still a handful of foods that are high fat. Sadly, Beyond Burger and Impossible Burger, as delicious as they are, they have lots of oil in them. And there are even a few whole food plants that are too high in fat. Those include nuts and seeds, coconut and avocados. So this is a recommendation to not eat those with an asterisk. The asterisk says, if you're totally healthy in every way, your body mass index says your normal weight range, your cholesterol is under 150, your LDL is under 80, your blood sugar's under 100, your blood pressure is under 120/80, all of these with no medications, and you've never been diagnosed with heart disease or cancer, you can safely, helpfully have a little bit of nuts, coconut, and avocado. A little bit of nuts means some slivered almonds on your green salad, great. It doesn't mean I'm going to sit down in front of the TV with a 16-ounce jar of Planters peanuts and open it up and eat them all in one sitting. That's not healthy for anybody. If you're totally healthy, a little bit of coconut on your entree or your dessert would be fine. It doesn't mean, oh, I'm going to not eat ice cream and I'll replace it with that non-dairy frozen dessert, which is almost all coconut oil, which is like 90 or 95% saturated fat. Not healthy. If you're totally healthy, a little bit of avocados, some slices on your green salad is fine. It doesn't mean I'm going to make a quart of guacamole and eat it all in one sitting in front of the TV. It's not healthy for anybody. And then you also want to be a little cautious with soy products and fruit juice. Whole soy is fine. It actually has health benefits, but there's a lot of heavily processed soy where they chemically treat it and turn it into fake meats, and that's not quite so healthy. And be cautious with fruit juice. Some in your recipes is fine, but changing out your 44-ounce big gulp soda for 44 ounces of fruit juice multiple times a day is not so healthy. Here's Caldwell Esselstyn, who is talking about this diet, and he says, some people think a whole food plant-based diet is extreme. Well, yeah, I mean, we've been taught from the very beginning that milk is good for us and we should be eating meat and so on. So the idea of cutting all those out of the diet, some people think is extreme. Esselstyn goes on to say 500,000 people a year will have their chests opened up and a vein taken from their leg and sewn onto their coronary artery. Some people would call that extreme. So if you would, envision yourself on the operating table where the surgeons are taking a buzz saw to cut open your chest bone so they can get at your heart to try to deal with the clogs. And then maybe you'd say to yourself, compared to that, eating a little less beef and a little more broccoli, maybe that dietary change is not so extreme after all. Don't have time here today, but heart disease is not the only cause of death that is heavily affected by our diet. Cancer, much of it, but not all of it, is affected by diet. Stroke, diabetes, blood pressure, deaths, all those are heavily affected by our diet. And if you add up all these leading sources of death causes of death in this country, you get this. About 2/3 of the deaths in this country, which amount to 1.3 million Americans every year dying needlessly because they're choosing to eat the wrong things. So think of yourself and the two people you love the most. If the three of you eat the standard American diet, statistically, 2 out of the 3 of you are going to go to your graves unnecessarily. I think that's too much. Let's see if we can stop some of this. The right diet can prevent or reduce or reverse heart disease. We talked about that. Some of these other diseases. every time, and Chef AJ, I know you know this, but every time we go to a conference, we learn about some new disease that goes away if you eat a whole food plant-based diet. It's just amazing. The great news is it's the same diet. We don't have to choose between an anti-heart disease diet, an anti-cancer diet, or an anti-arthritis diet. It's all the same diet. How lucky for us. Here's John's steps to long life and health. I am not an MD, I'm a PhD, but so you don't have to trust my medical advice. But after all I've learned, here's what I would recommend to you. Learn everything you can. You need to be smarter than your doctor. Some doctors are really up to speed on this, but it's a small fraction. I think a report recently said that 75% of all doctors finishing medical school have no courses or minimal courses in nutrition. So even though it causes 2/3 of our deaths, you'd think there would be a huge focus on it, but there isn't. So your doctor may know very little about nutrition. So to protect yourself, you need to learn everything you can. Once you learn, you need to make a change. And there's going to be challenges. Changing your habits that you've established over decades doesn't often come easily. But if you stick with it, and you can overcome these challenges. And at some point, I would ask you to help others through these 3 steps. If a significant other is willing to make this change with you, that can be awesome. But if they're not willing to do this, you need to by yourself. As one of the doctors said, when you're in the hospital bed, it's because of your choices of food, not your partner's. So, help yourself first, and then at some point, help others. Now, in order to learn, there's some different resources that you can tap into. The number one resource, in my opinion, is Chef AJ. She is so amazing. The Energizer Bunny, every day she's adding something new to her website and her list of videos. It's just awesome. I know that you know how to reach Chef AJ because you're watching this, but please look around for other things that she has done. Just tremendously amazing. Another resource, not nearly as good, is a website that I created called newsci.org. The nonprofit organization is called the Nutrition Science Foundation. So the website is just the letters for nutrition and the letters for science, newsci.org. So I've tried to put together some things that I think you might find useful to you. One of those things is a video I made of my talk. It includes some of the things I've talked about today, but I have been doing some Zoom talks in real time during the COVID days, and we finally recorded one of those. It's about an hour and a half long, so it's a bit of a listen. But if you are interested in that, we posted it on the website. You just click on, from the homepage, you click View Now, and that tells you a little bit about the video, and you can sign up, and we'll send you a link to that video. Other things on the website, we have some testimonial videos. Here's one over here. Renee talks about how she had lots of different diseases, emergency room trips and so on, and eliminated those through changes in her diet. And we were able to capture her talking about that and post it here. One of the interesting things about Renee is a couple of years after that, we needed another chef in our Little Green Forks kitchen. And so we sent out requests if anybody knows somebody, and Renee responded, and she's now one of our chefs in Little Green Forks. You'll see some pictures of her in the kitchen a little bit later. If you want even more success stories, you can click on this button here, Success Stories. And some of these are in writing, and there are also some other videos. Going back to the home page, If you're interested in recipes, you click on this button, and then it lists a whole bunch of recipes that you can dive down into. One that I thought I would love to share here is Linda's Lentil Loaf. I've put it here on the screen, but that might not be readable. You can go to the website and find it. This happens to be developed by one of my favorite cooks, which is my wife, Linda Canner. So we posted that here. And also we've adopted it as a recipe in Little Green Forks. So you can order this from them as well. There are many other recipes here, including some from Chef AJ and other well-known folks. So, feel free to browse the website for other recipes. Another thing, going back to the homepage, if you click on books and videos, you'll get little one-paragraph reviews of what I think are the best available. Here's sort of my top list. There are more listed on the website, but here's my top list. In terms of videos, Forks Over Knives, 90-minute video, changes lives. Highly recommend it. The China Study is probably my top pick by Colin Campbell. There's a Spanish version of that. We already talked about Caldwell Esselstyn's Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease, John McDougall's Starch Solution. If somebody has diabetes, they really need to read Neil Barnard's book about reversing diabetes. If you think you might still want to eat meat, you might want to read this book by a former cattle rancher who now won't eat meat. If you just want to lose a lot of weight, here's a weight loss book. A couple of newer books. Own Your Health is very fun read about a very serious subject, and it has 75 recipes by Chef AJ, yay. And also The Secrets to Ultimate Weight Loss, yay. Highly recommend that one. And here's a cookbook if you want to learn some more recipes as well. So here's two strategies that you might think about for how to make a change to your life for the better. One, you can do it yourself. I would say read one of the books that I just mentioned, maybe 10 of them. Figure out from that what you need to do, what you need to eat. Before you jump in, take your medical measurements so you know what your baseline is, what your cholesterol numbers are, your blood sugar numbers. Do a trial of a week of eating plant foods. You won't like all the new recipes that you encounter, but I think you'll find plenty that you do like. And if you're cooking for yourself, experiment with which of these healthy recipes really are easy to make as well as tasty. Once you've got your arsenal ready, you know what you're going to eat, make a commitment to go all in. Do a 90-day challenge of only eating no oil, whole food plants. If you can't do 90, do 60. If you can't do 60, do 30, but go all in. Some people have success with tapering into a program like this, but the psychologists that study this found that it's sort of like curing yourself of a heroin addiction. It's really hard to just taper off. It's easier to go, pardon the word, cold turkey, just cut it out completely.
Cold tofurkey.
Tofurkey. Love it. Cold tofurkey. At the end of your challenge time, take your measurements again. And I think you'll be pleasantly surprised at the improvement. And you may find that eating this way not only made you healthier, more energetic and so on, but it tastes good too. And then I ask, at some point, help others through this process. So that's one strategy. You're strong, you're going to do it yourself. Go for it. Here's another strategy. I don't want to study. I don't cook, or I don't want to cook. I'll just order healthy food from Little Green Forks. And yay, we do now deliver throughout the continental US. We've been supplying food to the local San Gabriel Valley area. This is a region 20 miles north of downtown Los Angeles. We've been delivering for about 10 years, but we've over the last year, we've experimented with shipping through FedEx. And I got to tell you, initially it didn't go so well. You know, we'd mark the boxes with fragile and this side up, and they'd arrive dropped and upside down, and you know, the soup would be spilling all over the inside of the box. But over time, we have developed some packaging techniques that we think work well enough. I'm going to be a little honest here and share another little negative story. In the middle of last winter, when COVID was raging and there was huge winter snowstorms in parts of the country, we shipped an overnight shipment of food to a gentleman in Kentucky, and it arrived 6 days later. And of course, we had to reimburse him and allow him to order again when things were better. But we went to the FedEx office and said, how can overnight delivery, you know, take 6 days? And they said, well, with COVID, our pilots and drivers, we didn't have enough of them, and the snow stopped a lot of it anyway. And you're lucky to have gotten it in 6 days. Okay. So it doesn't always work, but we'll reimburse if it doesn't work. But most of the time it does. So we cook the food one day, put it in the box, you get it the next morning. The food is, of course, all whole plant-based, no added oil, fresh greens and fruit. Entrees include both comfort foods and gourmet foods. You saw some of those at the very beginning, some of my favorites. It's environmentally friendly packaging when we can, but sorry, when we ship it across country, we got to put some foam padding in there and other things. So not completely environmentally friendly. I wanted to go through our order website just really quickly so you can kind of get an idea of, there's a few things that are a little different than some other websites. One of the things I want to draw your attention to is this set of dates across the top. And as Chef AJ said, the menu changes from day to day. So before you start adding things to your cart, you pick what day you want that to be delivered. Now, for local people, they can get their food Monday through Friday. But since shipping FedEx takes overnight, that means that we're making food Monday through Friday, but you're getting it Tuesday through Saturday. So suppose you're ordering the next available day, it comes up on that with that button, that date button circle highlighted. And then you see a set of items that you can add to your cart if you want. You can scroll down and see all the things we offer, handful of things. But if you were to click on the next day, Saturday, and look and see what's available, you'll see there's lots more. And that's because we don't want the food to go bad. So we're buying fresh food and we need to plan that out. And so we offer many more things if you order 2 or 3 days out. So once you've made the order, you click on the view cart to check out. And it shows you, in this case, I'm ordering lentil loaf plate, which includes not only the lentil loaf, but some vegetable and mashed potatoes, one of my favorites. And AJ, I know that you like the cinnamon bites. There's another flavor, which is the strawberry oatmeal bites, which I really enjoy. So I'm ordering these 2 things, and then I say proceed to checkout. Shows me what I'm ordering, shows me what the cost is, including the delivery, which is significant. You put in your address, and there's a place here where you can say order or delivery notes. And in this case, I'm not a real fan of green beans. I like peas a lot better. So I'm going to say in here, I type in the lentil loaf plate that I'm ordering, please replace the green beans with peas. And we're small enough that we can do that sort of thing now. So if you do have some special requests, go ahead and put those in. Then the coupon code you want to type in is Chef AJ15X. That's going to be in the show notes, so you can access that later. You type that in, that's good for $15 off an order of $60 or more. So there's my $60. After I put in the coupon code, $15 off, it comes down. So then I place the order. Our cutoff time is 9 p.m. One of our chefs comes in at 9 p.m. and works through the wee hours of the morning, primarily making the hot foods so that there's plenty of time for them to cool down before we put them in a box with ice packs to send off to you. And then during the day, our second chef comes in and makes the cool items like this salad that you see here. So she's looking at the screen that is generated from the order that you produced, and she starts into making, in this case, a spinach fruit salad. Here she is making, again, I love this picture because there's this little A in the background, which is the LA County Health Department inspection code. We're A category, which you would expect from a healthy food company. Then once the food is made, the chef puts it in a box, insulated for both impact and as well as heat loss. Our salad trays are pretty sturdy. We don't usually have much problems with them. Soups, early on we had problems. We now wrap them in saran wrap, which doesn't look very professional when you receive it, but it really helps protect them when the FedEx guy drops the box on its way to you. We also put these cardboard shields, sleeves around them, and we've had fairly good luck with that. Seal up the box, hand it to FedEx, and it comes to you the next day. Now, I'd like to share with you a little video made by one of our favorite customers.
Hi, my name is Chris Dyer, and I'm a Little Green Forks customer. A few years ago, I had a real health scare. Found out that I had high cholesterol, high blood pressure, and I even had some calcium kind of around my heart. All indicators that I was headed for some real trouble. Now, I went to my doctor, I talked to him, and he gave me some advice, wanted to give me some pills, give me some statins, and I wasn't sure if that's the direction I wanted to go. I said, what else could I do? How else could I improve this? And I found out that going to a fully plant-based diet was key to not only dealing with my issues, but potentially reversing the heart disease. So I decided to go vegan, and I needed some help. I needed some tools, and luckily I found Little Green Forks. They have been able to provide me with the healthy plant-based meals without oil, low in fat, and has been sort of like my rock, right? I, eat out sometimes and able to cook sometimes for myself, but being able to have food delivered to my door has been so key to me being successful to stick to the diet. And the good news is I have completely lowered my cholesterol. I've lowered my blood pressure. All of my labs look great. And in fact, in my last appointment with my cardiologist, he told me I had the single most best improvement he's ever seen from a patient, including people who were put on high amounts of medication. So I know the diet works, and Little Green Forks has been key to ensuring that I'm able to have the food that I need when I need it and not cheat or not make bad decisions as I go from day to day throughout this diet, through this life change. So thank you, Little Green Forks, and I highly recommend them.
And we really appreciate those words from Chris. And if I may say, I think people are smart that make the change to a plant-based diet before they have a heart attack. I was not one of those smart ones, and it almost cost me my life. Chris was one of the smart ones. He saw the warning signs, but he didn't wait till he had a heart attack to make the change. So good job, Chris. Now, in wrapping up, I want to introduce a new program, AJ, and I think this is maybe the first time you've heard of this. We call it the 30-day Jumpstart Program, and it works like this. We need to interview you before you start, and ideally ask you to take some before photos of yourself. We want you to take your medical measurements showing disease. This is not a program for people who are already eating plant-based and totally healthy and so on. This is for new folks, a little bit of extra incentive to get them over the top here. But if you have measurements showing high cholesterol, high blood pressure, blood sugar, so on, please convey them to us. And then eat only little green forks for 30 days. Order from our website, eat only little green forks. At the end of that time, take the medical measurements again and send them to us. We'll keep them completely confidential if you want. But if you want to share them, that's fine. I think you'll be so happy about them afterwards that you may want to share them. We'll interview you again, see if you have any words. If you'd like to give a testimonial like Chris did, great. If not, that's okay too. And then we'll credit you for 10% of the 30-day food order. And the information that you gave us, we will never publish it in a way that could be tracked back to you, but we would like to include it in aggregate. We're basically putting together a study that we want to be able to say, look, the people who ate this way for 30 days, here's what some of them got, here's what the best got, here's what the average is, and so on. So again, if you're new to this area and deciding you're really going to make an improvement in your life, please contact us by sending email to 30dayprogram@littlegreenforks.com. And that's what I've got for you, AJ.
Wow. Well, we have so many questions. So I hope I didn't miss any of them because my chat goes really fast. But let's start to the first one with Susanna. She's Canadian. We know you can't ship to Canada, but she's going to be in the United States and would love a vacation from cooking. Can you accept a Canadian credit card?
I don't know. We've never tried that, but certainly our credit cards work in any country in the world. So I'm assuming if it's one of the main ones, Visa or MasterCard,
Okay.
I would think that would work here. Let's try it.
Okay, that sounds fantastic. And then somebody on Facebook, when I posted the food I got, said, well, do you take precautions with COVID? Like, are you the people preparing the food in the kitchen? Are they wearing masks? Are they wearing gloves? So how does the preparation work?
And I think you saw the pictures that you had. Everybody's not only the usual hairnet, but also the COVID mask and gloves. Absolutely. I think they've shown now that early on, there was some concern that COVID was transmitted through touch. And I think they've pretty much concluded now it's sharing air, breathing in and out with somebody else who has COVID and is breathing in and out. But nonetheless, we take absolute precautions. Everybody in the kitchen wearing surgical masks and as well as gloves.
Thank you. And do you ship only to the continental United States, or is Alaska and Hawaii included or excluded?
Excluded, sorry. If somebody is in one of those places and really wants to experiment, we can investigate. I'm sure the FedEx charges are much higher, and I'm not sure they make it overnight, but we'd be willing to give it a try if somebody wants to try it.
Right. So Lori is saying, when you were doing the science part of the talk, how many grams of fat on the ideal diet, Nadia says, is 10% sufficient for women as well? I'm probably I'm guessing I eat like 7%.
Right. So the typical calorie count is what, 2,000 or maybe a little bit less. So 10% of that would be, or 7% of that is, wow, having to do the math here. 10% of 2,000 would be 200. So 7% would be 140.
Okay.
That sound right?
I don't that math and sports are two things I don't even try to do because I'm never going to get them right. So 10% of 2,000 is 200, and fat is 9 calories per gram. So that's like over 20 grams of fat, I guess. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Or if you're aiming for 7%, 140 calories divided by 9 is.
I don't think people realize that food has fat, even if you don't add it. Even greens have 3% of their calories from fat. Fruit has trace amounts of fat. Oats have about 20% of their calories from fat. I don't think people realize that God or nature, whatever you believe, whoever made food actually put fat in it so that you don't have to be slathering it with olive oil or nuts or seeds.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. What's your most popular item?
Lasagna.
Yeah. Makes sense.
And yeah, the one of the key there is normal lasagna has ricotta cheese. but we made a substitute using tofu and lemon juice and some spices. And I would challenge you to feed this lasagna to somebody who doesn't know that it's plant-based and see what they think of it, see if they could even tell the difference.
That's great. And Amy wants to know, how often does the menu change?
Every day. We have some of the basics, like the lasagna will be there on there almost all the time, and a few others repeat very regularly. And then there's others that will be on there maybe one day a week or one day a month even. So yeah, it's worth looking. If you don't care so much when you get it, but you want more variety, check the little circles at the top and look around for the thing that you like.
Great. And can the items be frozen? Or maybe are there just certain ones that can be frozen?
Great question. And yeah, the answer is certain ones. You really don't want to freeze your salads.
Of course.
They come back terrible. I've tried it. Actually, there's one exception to that. Even the spinach fruit salad that you saw Renee making, if you freeze that and then take it out of the freezer and put it in a blender with some water, it makes a great smoothie.
Very clever. Hey, I want to thank you for having, I didn't know that I was in your slide presentation. I want to thank you for putting 2 of my books in there. And I did want to say, Glenn and I republished through a publisher a 10th anniversary edition of Unprocessed with photos, and you may consider it acceptable now, because what we did is, I know that when I met you in 2010, you couldn't get behind it because there were too many high fat recipes. But what we did is we gave substitutions so that we kept the original recipes, but then we showed people how to do it without that. So just letting you know. All right.
Great. I'm going to immediately order a copy of that for myself.
Yeah, I don't know if it's good enough for your, list, but I did want to tell you that based on your feedback, which it wasn't just your feedback, by the way, we did make changes. It took us 10 years, but at least we did it. So Eileen says, are any of your ingredients organic? And what about the sodium content?
Great questions. We buy organic when we can, but not all foods are easy to come by organic. Salt content, we do have some salt in our foods. I know, AJ, you sometimes promote SOS diet, salt, oil, and sugar free. And as you said, for fat, there is some salt or sodium in all kinds of plants anyway. But we do find that salt adds flavor. And for people who have high blood pressure, excess salt can be a problem. But if you eat a whole food plant-based diet, most people no longer have high blood pressure. And so then a little bit of salt isn't much of a problem. But even when we do add salt, we try to keep the number of milligrams of sodium less than the calories. And I think you've run into this formula before. I heard it from Jeff Novick, I think. But if you're not supposed to have more than 2,000 milligrams of sodium a day, am I getting that number right? And you're not, in your average calorie intake might be in the neighborhood of 2,000. So if you make sure that each item that you eat doesn't have more milligrams of sodium than calories, then you're probably going to be okay. And that's what we aim for. Some of our foods have, of course, no added salt, and we list all the ingredients. You can get at that on the website and pick no added salt items if you want. But we do have some that we do add salt, but we try to keep it down to this milligrams per calorie.
Great, thank you. And a couple of live viewers like Amal are asking, but upon request, could someone have salt-free options made available to them?
In most cases, well, that's a great question. I think it depends on the recipe. If the recipe involves adding some garnish or salt that we purchase, we may not be able to have that available without salt in it. If it's a recipe where we're adding the salt ourselves, absolutely.
So they should probably call or email, right, if they have a very specific request. Perfect. And Susanna was saying some online shops don't accept Canadian credit cards, but I bet you're going to get it to work, Susanna, somehow. There's going to be a way. Mona says, how large are the sides compared to the entrees?
Sides. I think it's a factor of 2.5, roughly, somewhere between 2 and 3. So you mentioned your husband eats very different quantities than you do.
Yeah, because he eats food higher in caloric density, so he doesn't seem to be able to eat the volume I eat.
So I'm the one who likes to eat a lot. My wife eats a little, and so for me,
They should get together, and we should get together because we know how to eat.
Right. I need the large size, but many people are fine with the sides. And for somebody who's really cost sensitive, a number of our most popular dishes we also offer in family size, which is sort of a lasagna tray size. So that's also an option for some.
That's great. So there's a question from Joyce. Are there any, or are there a lot of grain-free options like lasagna without grain noodles, or gluten-free options?
There are definitely gluten-free options. Sorry, lasagna isn't one of those. But yeah, and again, you can look at the ingredients list on the website, and we summarize the allergens for each item, so you can quickly see whether something has wheat in it or soy in it.
I just want to tell you, my box came great. I mean, it wasn't bent or anything. It was like perfect.
Yay.
So the things that you put inside, how do you recommend we recycle? Because the ice chips, like those can be refrozen and reused, right?
Yes, definitely. Use those when you're going to go on a picnic or something and need an ice pack. Definitely.
And somebody's asking if the ingredients are listed on the website. Absolutely. If you just click the link I've been posting, it'll take you to the menu, and then you can, each thing, there's a little circle with an eye for information. Are the ingredients non-GMO? I would imagine you wouldn't use GMO ingredients.
Wow. We certainly wouldn't intentionally. I'm trying to think if there's any way something could sneak in.
I know. Usually corn is the one. Corn's the one thing corn and soy are like the two most heavily, corn, soy, and wheat are the most heavily genetically modified crops, but I bet you don't. You're a good man, yeah. John Turner.
We try.
So somebody's asking about your 30-day challenge. Is obesity the only thing, or being overweight the only thing you're looking for in that?
Obesity, high blood pressure, diabetes, high cholesterol.
Nice. Nice.
And try us on other things. Somebody was inquiring about IBS. What does that stand for?
Irritable bowel syndrome.
Irritable bowel syndrome, which I understand responds pretty well to this. So let's give it a try. Whatever you got.
Right. Well, I'm very proud. I'm very proud of all you've accomplished since your near-death experience, or maybe it really was a death experience, as you technically did die, right?
I'm not sure what the definition is.
Yeah. Okay, Susanna says, is there a delivery time the next day when you place your order by 9 p.m. the night before, or is it a delivery window?
It really depends on FedEx. We choose overnight. I think it's express or something like that. So hopefully it gets there early. Do you know when yours came?
Mine, like I ordered it Tuesday before 9, and it came Wednesday because I didn't want to take a chance to have it not be able to show it on the show. So that's why I ordered it a day earlier than I needed it, but it's still fine. Yeah, I think it came like at around 11 o'clock yesterday.
Good.
Yeah, it was great. It was like really quick. I'm like, how did they do that? So you don't remember dying? Like you didn't like see the angels and your great grandparents come to you? You don't remember that part of it, huh?
People do ask me that, did I see the light at the end of the tunnel? And the answer is I may have, but because of the lack of oxygen to the brain, I don't remember anything about that day, nothing. And even a couple of days after that, I would wake up in the hospital and I'd say to my wife, where am I? What happened? And she'd say, you're in the hospital, you had a heart attack. And I'd drift off, and a few minutes later, I'd wake up and I'd say, where am I? What happened? I couldn't remember anything for even a few minutes before. So sorry if I had some precious thing happen to me there. It's lost.
Wow. Well, so how do you feel it's been going the last, I think we've known each other 12 years now. Like, do you see an increase in the interest of people adopting plant-based diets for health, whether it's their own, the environment, or the animals? Because I've been doing this 45 years and I mean, I get frustrated and very like disheartened by with what I see, but I'm not as optimistic as I used to be.
I think the veganism for the health of the planet is rising. I hear a lot of people activating for animal welfare. The health side is frustrating. I do think it's growing. The plant-based nutrition healthcare conference where all the doctors go once a year to learn about the latest things. For many years, it was growing, and then COVID happened, and it's dropped off. But I think there's some slow growth there. The thing that's really frustrating for me is the financial situation with the medical establishment. If you look around and you try to find who benefits financially from somebody being healthy, the answer is very few. The doctors, of course, they only get paid usually when somebody's sick, not when they're healthy. The hospitals need sick people. You'd think insurance companies would be motivated to make people healthy, but they're not. They make their money as a percentage of the money that flows through. So if all of a sudden everybody got healthy, there'd be a lot of insurers that would go out of business. So it's frustrating.
Yeah. Well, Susan says, so glad you survived and you're here now to teach us how not to get heart disease in the first place. So thank you so much for your work, John. I really appreciate your friendship and your dedication to, I don't know if you guys know, he did just this tremendous program for free for years where he would do these workshops, both in person with the food. And then when COVID hit, online and giving free books. I mean, I don't think you're very humble and you're kind of behind the scenes, but you really do a lot and have done a lot. And I hope to get your name out there more. And you know what I was thinking is I haven't seen that lecture. You talked about this on your website, but if you want to give it to me, like in a file form, I'll just put it on my YouTube channel and then a lot of people might see it.
We will do that. Thank you so much.
Oh my God.
You are amazing.
Well, no, it's my, well, I think I like the unsung heroes, that people don't realize. And that's what my really show is about, getting people out there that need to be given a platform. So thank you so much. And I love those cookies. I don't know if I got the strawberry or the regular, but they're really good. And I managed to eat only 2 yesterday. One, I guess my food addiction is because you don't have anything addictive in it. There's no sugar in those cookies and there's no salt, no oil. It's just basically oats and fruit, but they're fabulous.
Glad you like them.
Yeah, with a little dusting of cinnamon on top. And I love that they're cold. And
I love the pudding that you gave us the recipe for years ago.
What would be great is to take the cookie and dip it in the pudding. That would be incredible. I suggest you try that as soon as possible. Oh my goodness. Right. That's great. Well, thanks so much, John. It was such a pleasure catching up with you.
Thank you.
My pleasure. And thanks all of you for watching another episode of Chef AJ Live. Please consider ordering from Little Green Forks. You got a wonderful discount coupon, and let's just support the great work that John Tanner is doing. And in the same time, supporting your health, and consider signing up for that 30-day challenge. And please come back tomorrow 1 hour earlier when my guest is Dr. Tiana Jenkins.